Today we're going to talk about Kaleidescape. Now you might be saying, what the heck is a kaleidoscape? I know what a kaleidoscope is. Well, Kaleidescape is a home theater source, and it's really particularly for home theater, especially for projection-based rooms. It's a source for watching movies and television shows. Most people are familiar with the other mass market types of sources, streaming, broadcast television, cable TV, disc, that kind of stuff. But Kaleidescape is another source that has a lot of pros and cons. Now, I use it myself. I really enjoy it. It's a great source, but it might not be for everybody, but it might be for you. Who knows? Well, in this video, we're going to really get deep into Kaleidescape. We're going to look at everything. We're going to look at everything from, setup to features, all the UI, why you might not want to use Kaleidescape. And also we're going to look specifically at two pieces of hardware, the Strato C player, which is pretty much the only player that they offer now. They've gone through a lot of different iterations of hardware over the years, and this is the new current version. And then the Terra Server, and this is the compact Terra Server. And we'll talk about all of the different pieces of hardware that they offer, but the models that we're going to look at are very representative of what you can expect from the entire portfolio, which is pretty cool, right? Because if there's variability, maybe the review isn't all that helpful, but this really is pretty much what you're going to get no matter what you buy from Kaleidescape. Now that you know what we're going to talk about, let's kind of dig in and let's talk about the different models of streaming and how Kaleidescape fits into the bigger picture. When you sit down to watch a movie, and let's talk about movies. We can talk about TV shows too, but really let's talk about movies. And you want to have that great experience. There are a number of different ways you can kind of get from A to Z, meaning how you can consume the content. The most common way today, believe it or not, is streaming, right? It's more common than even disc usage. You sit down, you pop open a Netflix or Paramount TV, whatever it is you're going to use to stream, and you watch your movie. And that can be with an Apple TV or NVIDIA Shield or built-in app in a television. That's one way, the most common way. I think the second most common way is you go to Walmart or you order online and you get a 4K Blu-ray or just a regular Blu-ray or even a DVD, and you pop that into the player. A subset of physical media or disc viewing is when you rip and then play that back on a Plex server. Now that's really physical media, right? Because you have to go buy the disc and you have to go through this process to stick it in that server. So I kind of lump those two together to a certain extent. And then the other methodology is Kaleidescape. Now Kaleidescape takes bits and pieces from everything. So what Kaleidescape is you have a player and a server, and then the content that comes as a download. Now you're not streaming. So really the definition of streaming is you don't have that material in your home. So with a disc, you have the video file on the disc. With streaming, you actually have to pull that down as you're watching, right? So it's kind of like a in-process download, but that's subject to all kinds of issues, right? You can get into speed issues with your internet, causes buffering, the quality is lower. And we're going to talk about those things in just a minute, but that's how you get the content. Kaleidescape, you actually download the full file ahead of time and you keep that on-prem. It's similar to what you do with a Plex rip, but with a Plex rip, the way that you get your file is you buy it on a disc, and then you rip it and convert it and process it and put it on your server. With Kaleidescape, you just go in the app or online and you say, I want this movie, and then it shoots it down automatically, and then it's in your environment. You can watch it whenever you want to. So that's how Kaleidescape works from a where does my content come from? And I want to talk about the comparison of these things from three different points of views. There's convenience, there's quality, and there's cost. We're going to look at the four different kinds of methodology, streaming, Kaleidescape, 4K disc, and Plex, through three different lenses: convenience, quality, and cost. And we'll go through each of those and compare them. So if you think about convenience, at the top of the line there, at the top of the list is going to be streaming. It is super convenient, right? You don't need to do anything ahead of time. You just sit down, select what you want to watch, and then you get straight to it, right? It's super easy. Underneath that would be Kaleidescape. So with Kaleidescape, you don't have to order physical media. You don't have to rip physical media. You don't have to go and walk up and put things into a player. But you do have to be prepared, meaning that it does take time for this to download. And with the newest equipment and a fast internet connection, that could be 15 minutes or something like that. So you don't really have to do a lot of prep ahead of time, but there is some. A lot of people will sit down and have dinner and say, hey, what do you guys want to watch tonight? Select a movie, and then if you don't already have it, buy it, download it, and then by the time you're all in the theater, it's all good to go. Now, underneath Kaleidescape for convenience would be Disc. Disc is nice because you always have it. You don't need internet, and you just simply have to order it. And once you have it, then the hard part's done. You just have to shove it in. Now, you have to have physical space to store it, and you have to shuffle the disc around. You have to be careful that you don't damage the disc and that kind of thing. But it comes in third. Now, the worst from a convenience point of view is Plex. It's absolutely horrible, right, on the front end. Once it's done, then it's pretty straightforward, right? It's very similar to a Kaleidescape experience once you go through the horrendous piece of buying a disc, ripping a disc, converting the file, and then you also have to set up all this infrastructure. You have to build servers, and you have to have a front end, and you have to. It's kind of painful. You have to be really hardcore, and you have to really want it to run a Plex server, particularly through the lens of convenience. Okay, now let's talk about quality. And what I mean by quality is the quality of the video and audio experience, not of the materials or the components, but what you experience when you project this thing up on the screen. Coming in at the best quality definitively is Kaleidescape. Each of the movies that you would watch, the file size is the largest. It contains the most material. They're the least compressed. So it is, bar none, the best quality that you can get in a movie. Next to that, one step down, and it's not a huge step. It's just pretty small, to be fair, and not everybody would be able to hear or see a difference. Maybe the most people wouldn't be able to hear and see a difference, even though there is, would be disc. 4K Blu-ray is absolutely top notch. And I love to watch them. I would have no problem watching them all the time. Quality is almost on par with Kaleidescape. And like I said, most people probably can't see or hear a difference. Underneath that, or I guess even with that really would be Plex, because you're really just taking that disc and making a rip of it. So that quality will be right on par. It's just a convenience that's kind of a pain in the butt, right? And then a pretty good step down underneath that would be streaming. The audio is not as good, video is not as good, and that's simply because they're compressing everything down so they can shove it over internet pipes. And here in the U.S., our internet pipes are not good in most places, right? In some urban locations, you can get gig service, but for most of the U.S., internet connectivity has not really kept up with the needs of streaming at a very high quality. Now, that being said, most of the television that I watch, non-movies, is streamed, and I don't have any problem with it. But when you want to have that high-end experience, the best of the best, streaming is typically not what you're going to look at. And I'll go from best cost to worst cost. So best cost is going to be streaming. Your investment there is going to be the stuff you have in your room, a streamer, or just using a built-in app, and then $10 or $15 or $20 a month for your service, and that's it. Now, you have to have internet, although I think most people probably have that anyway, so I don't really consider that a cost. But if you don't, that's an additional cost. But still, it comes in lower than the other items. The next step up in cost, meaning becoming more expensive, would be 4K disc, because you have to have a 4K disc player, and then you have to have the 4K discs themselves, right? But this still really isn't a super big expense of $30 for a movie, and then a couple $100 for a player, and you're in business for almost the best quality. So for bang for your buck, that's where you want to be at. Absolutely, 100%. The next step up in expense would be taking that disc and then ripping to Plex, because then you're going to be in several $1,000s into a Plex server, and then hours and hours of your time as you shuttle these discs around and do that kind of stuff to put that information into that system. And then by a large margin, from an expense point of view, Kaleidescape comes in. So you're paying a pretty good premium for the convenience and the extra quality that you get. Now, from an experience point of view, there is nothing better than Kaleidescape, but when you look at the pure dollars, It's a lot more than all of the other competitors. Will that come down? Who knows? The future is unknown from that point of view, but today we can definitively say that it's pretty expensive. So let's talk about how Kaleidescape stacks up against everything else. All right, so for cost, it's the most expensive, so it's the worst from a cost point of view. From a quality point of view, it's the best, and from a convenience point of view, it's almost the best. So, when you think about these different things and what you want to have in your environment, you need to weigh all of these pieces together. And, there are a lot of people that will say that, they just can't justify the cost for Kaleidescape. From my point of view, that's really not an issue that any of us can decide for anyone else. I use Kaleidescape because I want the best. And I want to have the best experience. So I have it, right? It costs a lot. I'm not rich. People are like, you have to be a millionaire to buy Kaleidescape. You don't, because I'm not. But it is got to be your hobby. It's got to be your thing, right? So like if cars are your thing and you have this tricked out car, that's what you're putting your money on. Most people are like, why would you spend that kind of cash? It's the same kind of thing, right? If you're into this hobby and this is your thing, then likely Kaleidescape is going to be what you look at, because that is how you get the best experience. Once you've got a great system, everything else is in place. Why would you not want to have the best? At least that's my point of view. All right, now we've kind of talked about the different models out there and gotten that out of the way, talked about the cost and all that kind of stuff. Now let's talk about the design, how this equipment with Kaleidescape actually works. Kaleidescape used to sell consolidated devices, meaning that it had both the server and the player integrated into a single piece. Kaleidescape has moved away from that model to more of a discrete client server model. And what that means is you have one piece of hardware that is your player, and then another piece of hardware that is your server. So all of your source material, all the movies and TV shows stay here. And then you can have players all over the place that can call back to that central hub of data, and then you can view that movie, right? It opens up the file and plays it into whatever television or projector you're using at the moment. Now, I particularly like this model as that you can just buy one large pool of storage and you don't have to invest in that type of infrastructure in every room. I would say for the vast majority of consumers, you're going to have in your home, one server, and that's the Terra or the compact Terra, and then one or more players. And maybe you'd have two in like a typical kind of family home. Now, if you're having a much larger environment, maybe you have five. And I think maybe five is the top end. I have to look up the spec, but maybe five is the maximum number of players you can have going at one time. Although you could have, I don't know, probably 20 or something spread out through a humongous palatial 20,000 square foot home if you wanted to. But there is a limit as to how many streams a server can support. But that's the model, right? Two pieces of hardware. And if you look today on the player side, all there is the Strato C. That's it. There are no other player models available today because this thing does everything. And it's it's 1 U tall, and it's half a rack width wide, or slightly smaller than that. Then when you look on the server side, there are two different lines. There's the compact Terra, which comes in a 6 or 22 terabyte model, and then a full Terra, which comes in a 48 or 88 terabyte model. When you think about pricing, as the Terra models get larger, they get more expensive. And when you're looking at that 88, I don't know what that number is off the top of my head, but you're like into small car territory, just to give you a relative comparison of cost. So you're paying a lot of money there. One thing, though, to remember is that unlike Plex, you don't have to keep everything in your server at all times. I personally have an older Strato consolidated player, and it's only got 6 terabytes of storage. So I just keep the movies that I want to watch, and usually that's just demo material. And then when something new comes along, I just download it, right? And I have a pool of storage kind of in my head that, okay, this is where all of my demo material sits, and I use that much space. And then everything else I just swap out as I need it. I'll delete things. And if you need to go back and grab that movie later, yeah, you go back and grab that movie later. Now, this begs one of the points that people always bring up as a hurdle to why they don't want to get into the Kaleidescape ecosystem, and that's because they can't own their movies, right? So if Kaleidescape somehow went away and you had a problem with hardware, you wouldn't be able to re-download all your stuff. that might be true, right? And if that is something that really, really bothers you, then Kaleidescape and streaming will never be for you. And I think you're going to have a problem in the future as the disc continues to dwindle down. And I did a video about that before, the death of 4K Blu-ray, and the whole disc market really is getting smaller and smaller. And I think that's going to drive more innovation into the Kaleidescape style services. So I think the world in 10 years is going to be vastly different than what it is today. But if you're a person that has to own the media, then this is not going to be for you. But for me, I'm very happy to trust that Kaleidescape is going to be around, or a successor to Kaleidescape, for as long as I want to watch content, right? I don't ever anticipate this going away. They made a big shift in strategy a number of years ago when they changed from the you bring your disc and it goes into Kaleidescape to you buy the movies and download them, which movie studios much prefer for obvious reasons. So they've weathered that storm, which I think is the biggest one. The only storms that will need to be weathered in the future are going to be storms of competition, which can only make things better for the consumer, right? So we'll see how that plays out down the line. But for now, I'm very happy and I feel very secure in purchases that I make in the Kaleidescape ecosystem. Let's talk a little bit about the Strato C specs, and that's the most important one from a specs point of view, right? So you can understand what's going on here. The unit is HDR capable. It doesn't do Dolby Vision, right? That's another item that people throw up a lot as to, okay, I can't use this because I need it for my TV. And that makes a lot of sense. If I had a really nice OLED television, 80 something inches, huge, and it could do Dolby Vision, then I want it. I would predict that one day down the line, Kaleidescape is going to come out with a Dolby Vision capable piece of equipment. When that might be, who knows? But today it doesn't do it, but it does the lesser or different flavors of HDR that are available. And I think the primary reason for that is this is really built for projector world, and Dolby Vision isn't really a thing in projector world. There's some ultra short throw projectors that claim Dolby Vision capabilities, but really that's not, it's not functionality that you find in this world. But as Kaleidescape makes the move more into television territory, that will be a feature that needs to be added. From an audio point of view, everything's covered. You get Dolby True Audio, HD and DTS HD Master and DTSX, all that kind of stuff, right? So it's all there. From a frame rate point of view, the player can do 60 frames per second at the top end, does bit rates of up to 100 megabits per second, and it's got a 4K upscaler included as well. From a control point of view, it's got IR on the front for remote controls. It's also got a jack on the back so that you can use any kind of sophisticated IR control systems. And I've got one where I'm using an old remote control controlling a bunch of stuff, and it's all in a rack. So I've got all these cables spread out and plugged into everything in IR emitters, and it works just fine for all that stuff. Also, things like Crestron, Control 4, Savant, the Kaleidescape app that you install on your phone. I have it on my iPhone. Those all work really well to control the actual Kaleidescape system. Now, there's also control that comes out of the Kaleidescape back to your control system to control other things. And typically where you will see that at is light control and then automatic masking on screens. So what you can do with Kaleidescape is when you play that movie, it can automatically dim your lights, or when you pause, it can bring them back up, or at the end of a movie, it can bring up the lights as well. And since Kaleidescape has all the metadata for the movies, you can have Kaleidescape control masking on screens. So if you're going to watch a 16:9, it'll take that 2.4:1 and mask that down for you automatically. That's pretty slick. That feels very theaterish like to me, and I really like that. The output of this player is HDMI 2.0A, and it's HDCP 2.2 compliant. As you can see, the setup is super easy. It's just power and Ethernet for the most part, and then for the player, you need your HDMI as well, and that's really it. And we'll talk about a little more of the setup once we get into the UI. And let's start with the UI on the screen. This would be, once things are going, this is how you actually would sit down and use it when you want to watch a movie. What we're looking at now is the main UI of Kaleidescape. This is what you see on really all of the marketing that's out there, and this is for the most part where you're going to live when you actually use Kaleidescape. And you can navigate around with your remote control, or you can navigate around with the cell phone app. I'm using a remote right now, so I've got a Harmony that's connected. And you can go from movie to movie, and it'll pop out the name there. They also have a shuffle feature that I have disabled because I don't really like it. But what it does is when you go to, say, Star Trek, it will shuffle everything around that's similar to that, so it's easier for you to find related content. It's pretty good when the names aren't alphabetically in order. Like if you went to next Friday, it would show all the other Friday movies beside that. So that's pretty slick. But for me, I just go for the straight alphabetic kind of action. Let's pick a movie to look at, and let's go with Endgame. That's a favorite, right? In the aftermath of Thanos' destruction, the remaining Avengers assemble one last time. So click the button Enter to go in, and then you're going to see a lot of stuff here. If you look down on the left is your menu, but there's general information about the movie there in the middle. You can return to the prior menu. You can play the movie. You can play a scene, and this is nice, right? So they automatically select a number of scenes for you that you can go to and watch immediately. You can also create your own scenes, and you can also play playlists of scenes that you create. So you could go in and create this selection of scenes from different movies that you could use as a sampler. So if you wanted to have a demo for your system, you could select your favorite scenes, come in, and then play that, and it would just step through them all. It's pretty cool. There's extras. So just like movies that you buy on disc, there are extras, and you can download those or not. I've chosen not to download those, but you can download them if you want to and watch those. There's a movie store section. So if you wanted to easily find and purchase movies related to the series or the director or the cast, you can find those quite easily. You can create collections for the movies, so it's easy to find all your Avengers movies in one spot if you wanted to. And then there's a section for more options, right? And you can see what's in here, all this kind of stuff. All right, but that's generally where you're going to live at in the main screen of the UI. I think it's rather nice. It looks really good. And I just love this humongous screen of all your movies that you collect over time. For me, I have just my favorites downloaded into my system. But if you have a really large server, go with one of the big ones, then you keep everything in your system if you want to, but you don't have to. For me, this is just the stuff that kind of make the top of the list. Now from here, we can go into menu, and then there are different options, right? So you can go up and down, and of course my phone here is blocking, the camera here is blocking off this bottom menu, but we're in the My Movies section, and you can look at things by search. You can look at collection, and so if you created a collection of Star Wars and Star Trek and Avengers and Marvel and DC, you could find them that way. We were in covers, and then you can also look at the list view, right? And this will show you the title, the genre, cast, director, all that kind of stuff. And then you can click left and right, and if you want to, just say we go to year 2010 and we click on that, then it will sort everything by the year, and then we can find other movies from 2010. Let's see if we want more Jon Favreau movies. There we have it now sorted by first letter of last name, and then cast. Click here, and then it by the first cast member's last name. But we'll go back and let's do one last one. Action adventure. Here we go, and you can see how they have two different options there. If you want to go by cast, you don't have that up and down selection like you do for the genres. Hitting that menu button, we're going to now go to the left to the movie store, and I'm going to click on Browse. Now this will let us look for movies that we might want to purchase. Every person has an account, and your movies are tied to your account, and you purchase all your movies through the movie store, and you can do that either here, online, or in the app, which is pretty cool. And all the stuff that I want is here. I've not hit something that I've wanted to put into my Kaleidescape system that wasn't available, but your mileage might vary, and they don't have everything, just like not everybody has everything, but they do have a large number of movies that never made it to disc. So that's kind of cool. All right, gonna go back to menu and then parental controls. So if you need to lock this out so the kids aren't able to watch things that they shouldn't, you can go in here and you can do that. And then we will go to system. And system is exactly what it says. So this is where you can look and see what's going on with your system, or make changes to settings, right? So here's the movie summary. You got 326, 408 different versions of movies. Nothing's downloading, and the available storage I have left on the system is enough for 1 HD or 8 SD movies. This thing is slap full. All right. This is a system summary. You can see all this stuff, and I think the most important thing here is the KOS version, and it's the 10.14, which is the new one that gives you access to plugging in a optical disk drive and doing disk to digital, which is super duper important. And then we can go to downloads, and this is where you can set your download speed and those kinds of things. All right, now we're going to go back and look at more system settings. Settings selection, and now we're gonna run through all this stuff pretty quickly, but I want you to see it because it is important. Your return just takes you back. Player options, screensaver set, and then what happens when it's off, if it's in standby or powered down. Wi-Fi setup. I use wired Ethernet. I would recommend that you do the same, but you can do Wi-Fi. Network settings. This is generally, what's your IP address and all those things. This is the player name, and this one's named Theater. And you can change this to whatever you want, or you can enter a custom name even. Settings for language and subtitles. You can set a passcode if you would like. Parental controls, as we talked about before, advanced. And so this is a calibration of different advanced features, particularly useful for dealing with screen masking and subtitles. That's pretty cool. In your system, you set your time zone, and then this is what I talked about before, where you could shuffle your cover art. I've got that alphabetically by title, but this is where you could change that. So let's we'll actually change that, and then go back and look at that in just a second. You could deactivate your player if you want, and then you have a setup video if you want, and then other settings are found by going to the IP address of your player. And that's really where the hardcore setup is. And we're going to get to that in the next section of the video. So let's see if we can go back to the top. We're going to go back to My Movies and Covers. All right, see if we can get this shuffle going. Oh, there it went. Haha. So we're on Spider-Man. Let's see what this is going to shuffle to now. So now you can see all the Spider-Mans are right there beside it. Let's go over to this Blade Runner. Let it auto shuffle. And you can see it brought the Blade Runner 2049 closer. Although it did bring Alien there. I'm curious what that's about. V. I don't think I've got anything really related to V here, but it's going to shuffle something. Oh, it brought Blade Runner up. Let's go look at Tron. Here we go. Tron Legacy, shuffling into Tron Classic. So it's pretty useful. It makes things pretty easy if you want to find related content pretty quickly. Man, it looks cool when everything shuffles up like that. Star Trek should shuffle the heck out of things. Con! Yeah, I know. I'm cool. All right, so that's enough for the on-screen setup menu. So let's jump in and take a look at the behind-the-scenes setup for this. We are now on a PC, and we have opened up the IP address of the device, and we're now looking at the this loaner system that I have from Kaleidescape. It brings you into the movie section to start, and this is where you can see all the movies. Let's see what happens when I click on The Greatest Showman. All right, it pops this up. and shows information, and you can add to a collection here if you want to. That's pretty nice. You can also delete it if you'd like. I don't want to do that, but all of the movies are here. You can view a printable version and download a spreadsheet of your movies as well. That's pretty cool. If you want, you can sort on any of these items, so you can sort by all of these different columns. Okay, you can look at history and see exactly what has happened, and you can see some downloads here and the speeds. So Wonder Woman came down in 9 minutes. The Blu-ray quality and the 4K HDR came down in 15 minutes. I think that's going to be very representative of what the different download speeds are for a 4K and a 1080p movie, which is pretty cool. Scroll down, you can see history goes back quite a bit there. Now, this next section is where a lot of the magic happens, right? So we're in settings now. You can see the name of the device. So I've got a movie server and a movie player. Remember, this is the compact Terra, and it's the 22 terabyte version. As you can see, the movie player is a Strato C. It shows you the temperature, the network speed, and all those items. You can set your front panel lights, how you want those to act. You can remove things from the system, and then you can add components. So if you had another player, you could add this to the system. The heart of a system is the movie server, right? From here, you can also restart the devices if you'd like. And if you see that the server can't be removed from the system, whereas the player can, because the server is kind of like the heart of things, and that makes sense. If we go up to general, you can deactivate the system there, and this shows where your KOS level is, and that 10.14 is important because that added in the feature of a attachable optical disc drive that allows you to do disc to digital. So we'll go back up to components, and let's look at the movie server and look at the settings here. This is pretty straightforward, just IP address information, and then control information if you need those advanced features. And then let's look at the settings for the movie player. There's a lot more going on in here that is very, very, very technical in nature, right? Let's show the video capabilities and status. So this kind of shows what's going on. This is in standby mode right now. I don't have it turned on. It's down in the theater. Everything's turned off, so no signals being transmitted. But it shows all of the different things that it can do. All right. Select video output behavior. Right. You can choose your preferred resolution. You can select, amongst minimize display mode, allow display mode changes, allow display mode changes using an external scaler. So it really can function the way that you want it to and interact with external scalars and really give you that best experience depending on the projector screen. If you're using anamorphic lens, that kind of stuff, select your screen aspect ratio. This is important, particularly if you're using a fixed anamorphic lens like I do, right? And then under the advanced video section, you can look at the OSD refresh, on-screen display refresh rate, HD support ultra, and then color sampling if you need to make changes there. Under audio, you can choose if you want to bitstream, let the player decode, or use PCM stereo. This shows the status, and everything's on standby, right? But it shows what it can do, lossy, lossless, and object-based. And we have some advanced settings down here as well. On the network side, it allows the streaming of movie trailers and media. Current network configuration under control, you'd use this if you need to set any specific control protocols. And lighting and shades allows you to integrate with the Lutron system to control those items. Kaleidescape has dropped a new firmware version, and in the firmware version, it's enabled this cool ability where you can take a CD-ROM, plug into your player, and stick in an old disc, and it will catalog it. And once it's cataloged, oh yeah, that's right. That's when the good stuff comes, because then you can use the disc to digital program and convert that into something that you can watch on the system at higher quality. Yeah, it's really, really sweet. So for pretty much pennies on the dollar, well, maybe like 50 cents on the dollar or 25 cents on the dollar, you can take your old discs and convert them into 4K quality. If you were able to stick around this whole 30 minutes, you now pretty much know everything there is to know about Kaleidescape, the equipment, movies, streaming, downloads, setup, everything, right? So pretty much soup to nuts. You now know what there is to know. And I guess the last piece of this really is to give my opinion. Now, you probably can tell by listening to me for the last little while what I think. But to be very clear, Kaleidescape absolutely signifies the pinnacle of source devices for home theater. There's nothing better, and there's nothing that I would replace Kaleidescape with. It is the one for me. It checkmarks all my boxes, right? It's easy to deal with. Getting movies is easy, gives you that true theater experience. The only downsides are the things we've talked about before. And if you can overcome those items, then this, I think, would be the right item for you as well. There is nothing better. Kaleidescape 100% is the best that you can get for home theater. All right. Thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this, please like and subscribe, ring the bell, do all those things, and I'll see you guys in the next video.